whether it's about Western leaders not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, or Democrats not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, or the media not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom knows how to deal with Donald Trump. Yeah. He gets it. He gets the fact that, you know what? You're going to get dirty. You're going to get mud all over your clothes. But that's what you've got to do if you're in a mud wrestle with the President of the United States.
She said, when they go low, we go high. In other words, we have the moral authority. We show them how it's done. We come to this from a place of respect and humanity. And Newsom's gone, no, not me.
Right, so I need to talk about something that's been brewing. And honestly, it's about time somebody said it. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This man has apparently decided that the old playbook, the when they go low, we go high approach, yeah, that's done. Finished. And look, I'm not saying Michelle Obama was wrong, but actually, wait, let me rephrase that. The strategy was noble, beautiful even. But against someone like Trump, it's like bringing a handshake to a knife fight. And here's what's fascinating. Newsom shows up at Davos, the World Economic Forum, surrounded by world leaders, and he's just not holding back at all. While other politicians are tiptoeing around, choosing their words carefully, this man is allegedly going straight for the jugular. Now, is he positioning himself for something bigger? A presidential run, perhaps? We'll see. But what I can tell you is this: Trump doesn't seem to like it one bit. If you love watching me unravel disasters like this, please click that subscribe button.
In Davos over the past couple of days, there is one American voice that has come through very loudly and has been with us kind of every minute of every day, it's felt, and that, of course, is the President, Donald Trump. But there has been another voice that has really also cut through in a way that I think puts him now on the international stage as a voice of opposition to Donald Trump. And that is the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, who until now has been, yes, he's been active. Yes, he has been talked about as a potential presidential candidate. But the thing about American politics is there is no post of leader of the opposition, as there is in our parliamentary system in the UK. But Gavin Newsom is sort of emerging now as the leader of the opposition to Donald Trump, and he's using that platform at Davos to take the attack to the man in Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, and according to prediction markets and early polling, Newsom is now the Democrats' current frontrunner for president for 2028. He has a book coming out next month, a memoir.
Always helpful.
It's quite often a rite of passage, isn't it, for people who want to throw their hat into the presidential ring, even though he wouldn't tell you that that's what he was doing at this stage. It's become pretty obvious. And he told The Atlantic earlier this month that the American people always support strong and wrong versus weak and right. And so I think this takes you into the Newsom psyche a little bit, which is 9 years ago, when Michelle Obama was trying to help people understand what the fight was for Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump. She said, when they go low, we go high. In other words, we have the moral authority. We show them how it's done. We come to this from a place of respect and humanity. And Newsom's gone, no, not me. No, thanks. And he's gone low. He's gone properly low on social media. He's funny. He's quite cruel. When he was addressing Elon Musk and the fallout with his estranged daughter, he was like, I'm sorry, your kid hates you. This stuff is meant to hurt and it's meant to rile. And it has. It's got under Donald Trump's skin because he quite often posts in all block capitals. He signs off, thank you for your attention, which is iconic. Trump, as if he was doing a sort of Truth Social post. And he's appeared at Davos and we've heard him a couple of times already this week. The first was when he kind of chided European leaders for being so weak and spineless. Let's just play you that clip.
Can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. Handing out crowns and this is pathetic. Nobel Prizes that are being given away. It's just pathetic. And I hope people understand how pathetic they look on the world stage. I mean, at least from an American perspective, it's embarrassing.
Look, I think he believes that. I think he says that with conviction. But I think he's also playing a clever game, which is that he can't seem to Americans to be siding with the European leaders, to be siding with world leaders. He has to sort of kick them a bit as well, to sort of say, what are you guys doing? Where are you? Come on. Because he's also trying to sort of, I guess, appear as an American with a sense of strength.
Yes, and I think that so far it's working very well. I mean, look, Gavin Newsom, a Democrat from California, do Democrats win when they are from coastal states which are very liberal? And people will throw stuff at Gavin Newsom about the state of Los Angeles or the state of, San Francisco, where there is a lot of homelessness and then a lot of drug addiction and all the rest of it.
And no houses.
But equally, he has shown himself to be absolutely equal to the fight.
Right, so let's just take a moment here. Did you catch that? The UK reporters are absolutely clocking what's happening. Newsom is out there at Davos on the world stage. And he's not mincing words. He literally said he should have brought knee pads for the world leaders. Knee pads, that's not diplomatic language. That's a man who's done playing nice. And here's what gets me. This is precisely what's been missing. For years, we've watched politician after politician try to take the high road against Trump. And where did it get them? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Michelle Obama's "when they go low, we go high" was beautiful in theory. But in practice, it was like bringing a poetry book to a cage fight. Now look at Newsom. He's calling out European leaders for rolling over. He's mocking the sycophancy. And this is the crucial bit, it's working. How do we know it's working? Because the Trump administration apparently cancelled his fireside chat at America House. They pulled the plug on a cosy little chat with Forbes magazine. Think about that for a second. The most powerful administration in the world is so rattled by a state governor that they can't even let him have a relaxed conversation at their own venue. That tells you everything you need to know about Trump's greatest weakness, doesn't it? He cannot handle someone who fights back on his terms. Newsom said it himself. Trump susses out weakness like no one else. It's his gift. But when someone actually punches back, when someone matches his energy, he crumbles. He cancels events. He throws tantrums in all capitals on social media. And honestly, it's about bloody time someone figured this out.
And the other thing we've often talked about on the podcast is how, whether it's about Western leaders not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, or Democrats not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, or the media not knowing how to deal with Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom knows how to deal with Donald Trump. Yeah. He gets it. He gets the fact that, you know what? You're going to get dirty. You're going to get mud all over your clothes. But that's what you've got to do if you're in a mud wrestle with the President of the United States.
And how do you know that he's got under Trump's skin? Because his appearance at Davos on stage, a fireside chat with Forbes magazine, was cancelled by the US administration. That's what we're hearing, at least from Newsom's own office. And just to kind of unpick that, a fireside chat is a very cosy thing, right? A fireside chat is the formal lingo for sort of meaning it's not going to be a hard-hitting talk. It's just going to be a chat. And somebody doesn't like the idea that Newsom and Forbes magazine, are sitting down together to have a discussion about the state of the world, the state of America, what's happening at Davos. Somebody has come in and cancelled that because they presumably either feel threatened by what he's about to say or by the amount of airtime that he's taking away from Trump.
So the Americans have never taken such a big delegation to Davos. And as well as the main conference centre, which is where all the activities, a lot of the activities unfold, every country will have its own little house. And Gavin Newsom was due to appear at America House, so probably run and paid for by the US administration. And it shows their sensitivity, as you say, Emily, that they have pulled the plug and said, no. If Gavin Newsom wants to go on the main stage in the World Economic Forum as a guest there, that's fine. But he's not doing it here. And so he's been on the main stage at the World Economic Forum, and he hasn't pulled his punches.
We decided the only way to address Trump is quite literally to fight fire with fire. I did an initiative, Prop 50 in California. It was to reflect the fact that Donald Trump called an American politician and said in the middle of the decade to the governor of the state of Texas, I am entitled Greg Abbott, to 5 seats. And I need you to redraw district lines, mid-year redistricting, to rig the 2026 election before one vote is cast. What the Trump administration expected we were going to do, as good Democrats do, we might write an op-ed. And we may, all go out and just say, this is just so wrong. And all of us would be applauding and say, yes, yes. And, as he's consolidating power. Instead, we went out and we redraw our maps. And we also drew a line in the sand. And I think that's what's required at this moment. And he cesses out weakness like no one else. That's his great strength. That's his gift. But you punch back. You fight fire with fire. You display conviction and strength. It's a different relationship. And so my relationship to this moment is reflected in that.
Right, so let's see what else we've got here. Watching. Oh, hold on. Did you catch that? Trump apparently called Greg Abbott directly and said, I'm entitled to 5 seats. Entitled, 5 seats, mid-decade redistricting. I'm sorry, what? The sheer audacity of just ringing up a governor and demanding electoral seats like you're ordering takeaway. Yes, I'll have 5 congressional districts, extra gerrymandered, hold the democracy. And here's where Newsom does something brilliant. Because what would the typical response be? An op-ed, a strongly worded letter, maybe a very concerned tweet. And Trump would laugh. He'd absolutely laugh. But no, Newsom hits back with Proposition 50. And crucially, and this is the bit that gets me, he didn't just push it through. He put it on the ballot. Let the people decide. That's the masterstroke right there. Because now he can turn around and say, this isn't me being petty, this is the will of California voters. And it only triggers if Texas actually redistricts. So he's built in plausible deniability while simultaneously loading a political weapon. That's not just playing the game, that's rewriting the rules whilst your opponent's still reading the manual. Pauses. And look, I know some people will say, well, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And normally I'd agree with that sentiment. But we're not in normal times, are we? When someone's actively trying to rig elections before a single vote is cast, waiting around for moral high ground isn't strategy, it's surrender. This is what fighting back actually looks like. Not performative outrage, not hand-wringing. Actual legislative action with democratic legitimacy behind it. The fact that it passed in an off-year election with significant margins, that tells you everything about where California voters stand on this.
He is a risk taker. He's not scared of risk. And what he's just been explaining to the audience is how he responded to Trump's attempts, essentially, to gerrymander these congressional seats in Texas. Gavin Newsom went further than the op-ed, went further than retaliation. He actually had a brand new democratic measure he called Prop 50, Proposition 50. And he said, if you're going to redistrict in Texas, I'm going to do the same in this blue democratic state of California. But he didn't just push it through. He said, I'm putting it on the ballot. Let the people of California tell you if they want it or not. And in an off-year election, which was last November, it went through with a significant size of victory. In other words, Gavin Newsom has now got the backing of the people of California to respond, to retaliate to Trump's moves by doing the same thing in California. And it's only triggered if Texas is redistricted. In other words, he can say, I didn't want to do this, you pushed me into it. So I think somebody who is just willing to play fire with fire is something that has put a little bit of kind of excitement in the Democrat belly right now, because it's true, you can't do everything. I mean, you can do a lot with a podcast and an op-ed, but not everything. And here's a politician who's saying, okay, right, we're going to fight. This is how we fight.
And you've just got to put it in the context of the mindset of American Democrats after the November election, when they all sat around and were moping and what have we done wrong, and we'd lost, and what can we do, and it's all so hopeless. And actually, I think that Gavin Newsom is a fighter who's got up and is making some inroads. And I think that him in Davos, the book coming out, he's projecting himself now on the international stage. Again, all classic signs of someone who is going to run in 2028. I would say the other person in California who is kind of being active again, Kamala Harris. She's looking at polling data that is coming out that is quite favourably weighted towards her, that she would do very well in a matchup against JD Vance or whoever it happens to be. And so Kamala Harris is back thinking, my political days are not over yet. Now, personally, I think that Gavin Newsom looks much more likely given the background. There's also one aspect of his personal life that is just worth mentioning.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Well, his marriage,
Ex-wife.
his ex-wife is a woman called Kimberly Guilfoyle. They were married in December 2001. They separated in 2004 and filed for divorce in January 2005. And they cited difficulties due to their careers on opposite coasts. Well, forget opposite coasts.
Yeah, opposite sides.
It's on opposite sides. Kimberly Guilfoyle was then attached to Donald Trump Jr., the partner of, a great MAGA voice on Fox, and for her efforts in supporting Donald Trump, she is now America's ambassador to Greece. And so she is there in this prominent position as a champion of MAGA, while her ex-husband could be the Democratic candidate for the presidency in 2028.
Right, so hold on, did you catch that? The fireside chat got cancelled by the US administration. A fireside chat with Forbes magazine. That's not exactly hard-hitting investigative journalism, is it? That's meant to be a cosy little sit-down, a chat by the fire, and somebody in the Trump camp looked at that and went, no, absolutely not. We can't have that. And I need you to understand what that means. That means Gavin Newsom is living rent-free in their heads, completely rent-free. They're so rattled by one governor from California that they're pulling the plug on softball interviews at Davos, at America House, the house that American taxpayers presumably funded. And they're saying, nope, you can't speak here. That's extraordinary, isn't it? That's not strength, that's insecurity. That's the political equivalent of putting your fingers in your ears and going, la la la, I can't hear you. And look, we've seen this pattern before with Trump. Anyone who gets under his skin, anyone who refuses to bow down and play nice, suddenly becomes enemy number one. But what's different here is Newsom isn't backing down. He's leaning in. He went to the main stage at Davos anyway. He's still talking. He's still fighting. And here's the thing about the whole fight fire with fire approach. It's working. It's demonstrably working. Because if it wasn't working, if Newsom was just some annoying gnat buzzing around, they wouldn't bother cancelling his events. They'd ignore him. But they can't ignore him because he's figured out the playbook. He's figured out that you can't debate someone like Trump with policy papers and reasoned arguments alone. You have to match the energy. And apparently that matching of energy is so effective that they're having to physically remove him from platforms just to stop people hearing what he has to say.
Yeah, I mean, this all started weirdly with Newsom doing this podcast. To your Kimberly Guilfoyle point, he started doing this podcast where he invited on all these MAGA voices.
Yeah,
and
Steve
he said,
Bannon and the like.
all of them, I want to hear them. I want to hear what they've got to say. And he was kind of ridiculed at the beginning because he wasn't really pushing back. He didn't really ask tough questions. He just sat there and listened and let them speak. But essentially, I guess it went into the ether, which was like, okay, if I don't know what they're saying, how do I know how to counter them? And so it sort of feels like this is the product of what he's been doing now for 18 months, where he's gone, I get you. I hear you. I see your social media. I see your language. I see your problems. I see your weaknesses. I've got it. But we are still in 2026. It's a long way to go to a presidential election.
Yeah, and there'll be so many other people who are looking at themselves in the mirrors thinking, I could be the candidate in 2028. There is not going to be a coronation for the next Democratic candidate as there was for Kamala Harris when Joe Biden pulled out of the race very late.
But what I would say is if the word cloud around Biden at the end was, is this
doddering,
unfair?
weak, senile, frail.
Right. Then what you're looking at, in the voter's mind, presumably, is somebody who is the exact antithesis of that.
We'll be back after this.
And then literally minutes after announcing his mysterious deal, the president took time from 6,000 miles away to continue his war on talk shows. He shared this story about how his minions at the FCC are planning to make it difficult for shows like ours and The View to interview politicians they don't align with. For real, we are once again getting threatened by the FCC. I might need your help again, okay?
Jimmy Kimmel, and the FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, which is in charge of giving out broadcasting licenses. And we know its chair, Brendan Carr, who Donald Trump appointed, had already threatened Jimmy Kimmel and saying, the TV company could lose its license over his monologue when in the wake of the Charlie Kirk killing. And Disney were going to go ahead with it. The show got cancelled. There was such an outcry that the show was brought back onto air. But now it seems that Donald Trump is threatening again. His ire at late night shows knows no bounds, and he wants to go after them.
Last time Trump lashed out at late night comedians, has responded to this new edict by saying, look, the reason that comedy shows are full of politics now is because our politicians are comedians. They've come to us. They've brought themselves into our sphere. How can we not talk about the stuff that is going on around us when some of it is kind of so batshit crazy? And the latest salvo was after seeing Trump speaking to that really packed room in Davos yesterday. You remember the queues? It looked, you know, over the top. Jimmy Kimmel's take was, "Oh, it's I can't stand him room only." Right? So, you know, so he's keeping on just sort of nagging, tearing, gnawing at Trump's sort of tails on all this. Because, frankly, if he stops, he dies anyway. Right? If Kimmel stops doing the stuff that he is on stage to do, which is satire, which is political attack, then there is no point for the shows to go on anyway. But when you talk about having to have a representative number of politicians in each of the shows, what does that look like?
Right. Okay, so here's where it gets properly infuriating. Because now we're talking about the FCC, we're talking about broadcasting licenses, and we're talking about Donald Trump essentially trying to weaponize federal agencies to silence comedians. Comedians! Let that sink in for a moment. And look, I have to be fair here. Jimmy Kimmel did make that joke about the standing room only crowd. And yes, it was pointed, but that's literally his job. That's what late night television is. Political satire has existed since there were politics to satirize. But here's what really gets me. And they touched on it perfectly in that clip. Where is the demand for Fox News to have more progressive voices? Where's the fairness doctrine for Newsmax? Where's the balanced representation on One American News Network? Because I must have missed that memo. I must have missed the part where Brendan Carr, Trump's hand-picked FCC chair, was threatening their broadcast licenses. It's not about balance. It never was about balance. This is about thin skin. This is about a man who cannot handle being the punchline, even though, and this is the beautiful irony, he made himself the punchline. As Kimmel said, politicians have become comedians. They've entered our sphere. How are you supposed to ignore material that's just writing itself? And then there's that point about right-wing comedians. Where are they? No, genuinely, where are they? The free market crowd, the deregulation enthusiasts. Suddenly they want the government to mandate who gets to be funny on television. You can't have it both ways. Either the market decides or it doesn't. And right now, the market has decided that mocking this administration is apparently very, very profitable.
Well, it goes back to the 1980s when, you know, the regulation of US broadcasting was pretty similar to the UK when there was Ofcom. And it was Ronald Reagan who loosened up all the rules so that it could create a Fox News, so that there could be right-wing channels. And the one thing that I don't think Donald Trump is saying is that there's this fairness doctrine that he seems to want to apply to late night shows. I don't think he's saying that Fox News needs to have
more progressives
more liberals on the channel.
It's not woke enough.
I don't think he's saying that to Newsmax. I don't think he's saying that to the One American News Network. So all those networks, which are absolutely packed full of kind of attack dogs who support Donald Trump, they're fine. It's the liberal TV stations that need to be giving a kind of a counter voice. And so you just think, hang on, no, this isn't about balance. This isn't about fairness. This isn't about equal representation. It's not the same mission that Ofcom had. This is about Donald Trump being so pissed off with the late night hosts who just, you know, rip him apart on a regular basis.
Yeah, it slightly reminds me, during the whole Brexit debate, of the people who said, why doesn't the BBC have more right-wing comedians on? I mean, for all the free marketers who absolutely loved Brexit, why are you now trying to decree exactly who says what on what channel and what platform? And who is considered, you know, if they're considered funny, they'll be on, you know? If they are making people laugh, they will be sought after and they will be on your screens or they will be on the late night shows. So don't we sort of allow for the markets to dictate what people want to see?
Yeah, and look, if the comedians weren't funny, people wouldn't be tuning in. And ABC and NBC and CBS, the big American networks in the US, are not charities. Those shows would not be there unless they were making money. And I'm absolutely convinced if they thought there was more money to be made by having right-wing comedians, Seth Meyers and Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, they'd be fired and they would bring in people who would make the networks and the shareholders even more money. The fact of the matter is, where are those brilliant right-wing comedians that are going to make you split your sides?
Yeah, I mean, the idea, I suppose, that... do you remember The Onion, the satirical magazine, which kind of came out with stuff that was sort of too shocking to say?
Right, so, look, after watching all of that, I think the picture is rather clear, isn't it? What we've just witnessed is a masterclass in how you actually confront someone like Trump. Gavin Newsom, and I'm not saying he's perfect, no politician is, but the man understands something that so many others have failed to grasp for years now. You cannot shame someone who has no shame. You cannot appeal to the better angels of someone who, let's be honest, doesn't seem particularly interested in angels of any kind. And that's the breakthrough here. Newsom's not writing op-eds and hoping someone reads them. He's not clutching pearls and saying, well, this simply isn't done. No, he's matching energy. He's fighting fire with fire. And crucially, he's getting results. The fireside chat getting cancelled, that tells you everything. When they start pulling plugs and blocking appearances, that's when you know you've struck a nerve. And meanwhile, what's happening on the media front? Trump's going after comedians. Comedians. Because apparently being mocked on late-night television is a national security threat now. The hypocrisy is staggering. Fox News can run whatever they want, but heaven forbid someone makes a joke about the president. So here's what I want you to take away from this. We need more of this energy. We need politicians who aren't afraid to get in the mud, who understand that playing nice hasn't worked. Democracy requires people willing to defend it, loudly, unapologetically, and yes, sometimes with a bit of cruelty. Stay engaged, stay informed. And for goodness sake, keep laughing at the absurdity of it all. Because if they're this angry about comedians, we must be doing something right.